Whether you're feeling overwhelmed by career demands, seeking to understand ancient feminine symbols and their relevance today, or simply curious about what the divine feminine actually means beyond the buzzwords, this conversation offers valuable insights you can immediately apply to your daily life. So get ready to discover how moon cycles can inform your work schedule, how herbs can support your feminine essence, and how understanding your personal heroine's journey can transform how you navigate challenges. This isn't about adding self care to your to do list, it's about fundamentally shifting how you experience your feminine power in a modern world. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a true Renaissance woman of holistic feminine wisdom. She's an intuitive astrologer who reads the language of the stars, a knowledgeable herbalist who harnesses nature's healing power, a compassionate doula who guided countless women through the sacred threshold of birth, and a dedicated advocate for the divine feminine in all its forms. In our fast paced, productivity obsessed world, many women find themselves disconnected from their deeper feminine wisdom, leading to burnout, health challenges, and a sense that something essential is missing from their lives. Our guest, Julie Dean Richards, has devoted her life to helping women reclaim their sacred feminine power through practical rituals, herbal support, and an understanding of their unique heroine's journey. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here as well. I didn't mention in the intro what career you came from, but maybe you want to kind of integrate that into your own personal narrative?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'm actually an attorney. I'm still a licensed attorney, but before I was an attorney, and I think where my story really starts is when I worked in research. So I actually right out of college, I did, my major was in this communications piece, but my real love was the research piece, and that was kind of like my minor or my emphasis. And so I got swooped up by a big tech company right out of college to be a consultant on, big research projects for high touch clients like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Google, like you name it, I've worked with them. And, what I would do is the logistics part of the research, and people would come and say, we have this study we want to do. I would help them go through and say, okay, we need to change the study this way. This is how we can do it. And they would say, is it possible for us to get this many participants in Bangladesh? And how can we do that? And I would figure out all the logistics of how to do the study and everything like that. And it was during that process I really started to kind of question my own reality and become more open-minded because I was raised by a nurse and like a super, like totally normal Western family. You never would have guessed where I would end up today. And it was during that process I started to see something that I think all of us know, but like that the world is ruled by money. And but for me, it was like this big wake up call, like, oh, these studies that I'm consulting on, the data is getting switched and there's these pieces and this is not the research that they taught me in school. And like, this is not how we're supposed to be doing research. And I found out that it wasn't just like my company or whatever. It's just the research industry. There's so much that we take for granted as like we're just like, oh, it's this great study out of Harvard, and it's like actually, that data isn't what you think it is. That came from a place you don't know where it actually came from. And so for me, it became this like ethical issue. And I tried so hard to stay in it and, be helpful. And of course, everybody has explanations for why it works the way that it does. But there was actually a completely fraudulent study that happened. And it ended up being published. Like it was not my project. It was a friend of mine's project, but I knew that the data had been faked. And so finally I said, I'm totally out of here. Like, I can't do this anymore. This is not for me. But that experience really made me start to question my own reality. Like, what do I believe? What are actually my beliefs? Like, what do I think about this? And so I started doing my own research and I started unraveling my own belief system and things like that. And so I became more open-minded. And that open-mindedness allowed me to enter into the world of things like astrology and the sacred feminine. And, of course, it's drop by drop, it doesn't happen all at once,
Yes, you're
you
right.
know. Yeah, it's drop by drop. And so I had met a woman I went on this herbalist retreat and I met this woman at this herbalist retreat and she was like, "You've got to meet my niece." And turns out her niece is like a big time astrologer. And I didn't know that. And, we met up and she asked me the fateful question, what time were you born? When were you born? Right. And she started telling me things about my life she couldn't have possibly known. And we just hit it off and became such good friends. And that really, I couldn't stop researching from that time. I had to know everything about it. I still was going to law school because that was still my path. That experience with that fraudulent study really pushed me to want to go into law and learn about it. And so I was already an astrologer when I started at law school, but it's just really moved from there. And my experience in law school was actually what pushed me even more into the sacred feminine and realizing, oh my goodness, women need this so much. Like we need to open up our inner divinity. So because I found out when I was in law school, I was pregnant with my daughter, with my third child, totally unexpectedly. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't bring my baby girl into this world, and I had already been studying the sacred feminine a little bit, but then it really opened up everything. And I think this was because, I was in this very masculine environment. There's
Oh, yeah.
no more masculine environment than law school, right? Like it's just the most masculine environment you can have. And so it really pushed me the opposite way that like I had this life growing inside of me and doing this such a feminine process and being with that. And so the sacred feminine helped me to balance that and to learn so much more. And I just realized, this is what I need to do with my life. So
Wow.
that's my story.
That's an amazing story. Wow. I love it. Oh, such a journey to get to where you are today and to embrace it and to understand early on in your life that, hey, I can still be a lawyer, but I still have this other passion and and learning astrology is not easy either because I've loved astrology like most of my life. But for me, I understand a lot of it, but to take it and explain it the way an astrologer does, I couldn't do that. But let's talk about the divine feminine. How would you define the divine feminine, and how does it differ from cultural stereotypes about femininity?
Oh, oh yeah, totally. So, for some people, the divine, when they hear the word divine feminine, this is like such a buzzword right now. People are talking about it all the time, and people have different definitions. And that's why sometimes I like to use sacred feminine as another alternative to divine feminine. And not that I don't love that word. I love the divine feminine, but for some people, there are cultures, right? And people who worship a goddess, right? An actual divine feminine deity who is a goddess. But most of which I think is amazing, and I also personally have this as part of my beliefs and things like that. But when we're talking about the divine feminine, it's about the fact that inside of you, right, inside of every woman, there is a divine part of you, this sacred feminine part. There is a goddess living inside of you, right? You have an inner goddess in you. And of course, both men and women, they both have masculine and feminine in them. Of course, I'm concentrating on women because that's who I work with the most. And so, yeah, of course, men also have this sacred feminine piece of them. But for women, it's really important because I think most of the time, this is not always true for all people, but most of the time, you're for women, we're about, 90-10 when it comes to this. We've got this feminine piece and how this differs. So for people who are like freaking out right now, like how could you say that about like femininity and how could you stereotype? The divine feminine is so different than our stereotype. When we think about femininity, we think about a 1950s world. in most cases, right? Like women pregnant, barefoot in the kitchen, all
In
this.
a cocktail dress or in a nice
Yes,
dress, all all dolled up, and
yes.
yeah, yes,
Yes, totally. And that's the whole thing is like, no, that is not femininity. Femininity is not like your ability to cook and clean. Like femininity
right.
is not just your ability to create or raise children. Femininity is not being meek and submissive. Like that is not the sacred feminine. That is not femininity. Those are societal expectations that we've created and roles that we've created based on our society and the culture that we live in. The sacred feminine is we learn about her. So this is going to be very different than most people are used to. So I want to take the yin yang symbol because I think it's
Beautiful.
such a beautiful epitaph of this. But when you think about the yin and the yang, for people who don't know, right, the yin and yang kind of looks like two fish swimming around each other. That's what it's supposed to be. And there's a white side and a black side, and each one has a dot on it. That's the opposite color. So the white has a black dot and the black has a white dot. And when these represent the masculine and the feminine, and most people would be like, well, isn't the feminine the white fish? And it's like, no, no, no. The feminine is actually the black fish. It's the black part of that, the yang side or the yin side of things. And so the feminine, if we think about these two colors, white and black, well, white is going to be more associated with daytime, brightness, light outside, right? And then the dark piece is going to be more associated with the moon, darkness, softness, creation. And so the sacred feminine is a lot more about this womb space, right? If we think about like a womb or in ancient times, like one of the symbols of the divine feminine is the cave, which is like such a great
Ah, yes,
symbol
yes.
for that because it's dark, it's wet, it's warm, it's the void where anything is possible, right? Everything is possible in this space. And we have conditioned ourselves to be so afraid of that space. We're like, oh, the sun is good and the nighttime is bad. And like the dark, the black is a color for darkness and evil, and white is a color for goodness. And that's just not the way that it works. That is not the truth. The truth is that both have value and both need each other. And that's the point of the yin yang symbol. You have to have both, right? And even in a sunny day, you still have shade and you need shade during that sunny day, right? And that is like that black part of the white yang symbol. And even during the night, you need light, and that's the stars and the moon. And they all play a part together and they're all working together, right? And so I want women to understand you are this creative space where anything is possible. Right? Ever shifting, but constant, growing and learning all the time and making, you make everything happen. You are the veil, right? Like you weave time and space
Yeah.
together, right? Not just with your body, with your soul, with your heart. And I think people are really scared of that because they've never heard it that way before. But it's so, so important for us to understand that because in our modern society, we've made it so only that white part is good. Like we have made it so, only the day is good, only summer is good. Oh, winter is so bad. It's terrible. The nighttime is bad. It's ugly. And we've told women over and over again, to be successful, you must be like a man. You have to be like summertime. You got to be on all the time. You got to be shining all the time. You got to be like big and bold and bright all the time. You got to
Non-emotional.
get in it. Yeah, you can't be emotional.
Nope.
Burn off all your emotions, right? Instead of being like, no, you're actually like the moon and you can work in your own tides, right? Like you can pull those tides and you can shift and change every single day. And you can do that in this softer way that brings everything to you. Because that's the part of the feminine. The feminine is the cave because she receives everything. She gets everything into herself. She not only does she create, right? Like she is like the honeybee. She takes in this dust and she makes this beautiful honey out of it, right? Taking in this pollen and receiving, and then making magic out of that. And that is truly the divine feminine.
That is awesome. I love the way you explained it. I was just so captivated by the way you were explaining everything. And I love that you use the yin yang symbol because I use it a lot in my practice as a yoga and qigong instructor. And yeah, it's like embodying this beautiful, receptive quality that we forget that we have. And,
Mhm.
you know, being a part of this male society where we always have to compete, even against other women, it's
Mhm.
really not supportive.
No. No.
and it's really wonderful that you're doing the work to help women reconnect with the sacred divine feminine, and that
Hmm.
we need to embrace it and not forget it, and to create the environment. We have the power to create the environment and move towards more of a society where we're working together and collaborating versus competing against each other, and inviting more of that yin quality. I love that.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And
Yeah.
like women, especially, but the divine feminine in general, I mean, I know we'll probably talk more about symbols later, but I
Yes.
wanted to bring up the tree because it's one we see all the time. We talk about the tree of life, and you can see it in necklaces and jewelry. Well, that's a symbol of the divine feminine, and people don't realize that. And at first, scientists thought that trees competed, right, in the forest. They were competing for light, they were competing for resources, they were competing for water, because that's our assumption, right? Our assumption is like animals compete, they compete for food and resources,
Right.
but trees don't compete like that. Trees actually collaborate. Now we know, right? Trees are connected through the root system and through mycelium. Um, pathways in the ground. They communicate with each other. They talk to each other. They give each other resources and they collaborate. They don't compete. They help each other. They communicate with each other and they all help each other grow. They will keep what looks like a stump alive for hundreds of years, actually. Now we know they'll give resources to it because they love it, right? Like they are a collaborating community, and that tree stump gives its wisdom back. It communicates to the other trees and it helps them get away from danger, and it gives. So that's the society that the divine feminine could create, is this collaborative society
Yes.
where we work together instead of always having to compete with each other.
I love that. That is so true. And I love also how you talk about trees. How might one recognize when they're disconnected from their sacred feminine energy?
Yeah, this is a great one because I think most women are going to be like, "Oh, I am really disconnected," right? But you can't receive, meaning like you won't let people do things for you, right? You have to do it yourself. You have a really hard time asking for help. You have a really hard time, with this idea of rest. If you can't rest, if you're go, go, go all the time, if you feel like you must be doing to be worthwhile, I think this is a huge one that most women have is if your worth is inherently connected to what you do, then you're disconnected from your divine feminine, because it is not about doing, it is about being. And if you hate your body, that's another big disconnection from the divine feminine, because embodiment is a huge part of tapping into that sacred feminine place. And if you are judging other women, backbiting, talking, feeling like you have to compete, you have to get on the top of the food chain, and even if you are afraid to be seen, that's a really big one of being disconnected to the divine feminine, is being afraid to be your true self, your authentic
Ah,
self, and
okay. Yep.
and being afraid to be seen by other people for who you truly are. So I would say those are the really, really big one, but particularly looking at, where do you get your worth from? Is your worth the checklist and finishing the checklist? Is that where your worth is from? Is your worth from being better than other people in any way? Is your worth, why are you saying what you're saying about other women or even men? Like, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a place of competition, right? Because we can look at someone and it's really easy to look at these qualities and say like, oh, well, she hasn't made because she's so skinny and pretty,
Mm.
and like, make these excuses and put stuff on other women. For someone who is, hates on powerful women, you might want to look at yourself and maybe you're disconnected, because the feminine's not afraid of other people being powerful, right? It knows that we're all just as powerful as each other. We don't need to compete. But yeah, that checklist, and again, that body piece is really important to look at. Do you hate your body? That's a
Yes.
big thing.
Yeah, no, that's important, because your body changes all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having children changes your body, surgeries change your body.
Mm-hmm.
I know voice is really important. Women are afraid to be heard, and
Mm-hmm.
expression, self-expression is important as well.
Totally.
And I feel that a lot of uh, the illnesses that women have, whether it's breast cancer or ovarian cancer, or any of those cancers, or anything associated with the female anatomy, is because
Mm-hmm.
we repress our own authenticity or that sacred femininity.
Totally, totally. And sex is such a big one to
Yeah.
look at too. Like, are you disconnected? Can you How is intimacy for you? Because if you're having a big struggle in the intimacy department, then you might be disconnected from that sacred feminine, right? And especially if you're afraid to look at your lady parts, if those are, scary to you, if it's scary for you to have full expression in your sexuality, that's something really to look at there. Because again, the feminine is receiving, right? And so if you're blocking yourself, especially in intimacy, if you can't orgasm, if you're having a really hard time, then there's a piece of you that's not able to relax. There's part of you that's disconnected from that divine feminine piece as well.
That's really important. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think nowadays women have more access to help in that area where years
Yeah,
ago it was more of a taboo of a discussion for
totally.
women to talk, even with their doctors. I think their doctors didn't even talk about that, and probably they
Yeah.
may not today. But we have authority over our own bodies, and if you want to experience pleasure in any way, just and understand how you are, how you feel, how you're not feeling, and
Hmm.
to embrace that sensuality. I think that's super important.
Oh, totally, totally. And how are your emotions around it? Are you scared of it? Are you scared of yourself? Are you afraid? Are you even letting yourself have emotions in general, even outside of intimacy? Where are you scared to express your emotions? And, or is your default emotion only anger? And
Mm,
that's something to look at because, I think we in our society, anger is acceptable because it's more masculine, it's more fiery, it's more, you're protecting yourself. You are protecting yourself with that anger, you're lashing out. But anger is truly a secondary emotion, right? What's underneath that anger? Usually it's sadness, abandonment, hopelessness, right? That's what's under the anger. But we're okay expressing anger because anger makes you look strong and big, right? Like
right.
I'm so strong, I'm so big. And not to say that the divine feminine cannot rage. Yes, she can. We talk about sacred rage a ton in the work I do. Rage is so important. It's important for women to feel rage. But lots of times, what I will see in a lot of women who have really masculinized themselves is they will turn to anger over like they're too afraid to cry. They're too afraid to let any kind of emotion out. But if it is anger, it's okay because then they're strong if they feel
Mm.
like they can be angry, and they're not getting to those root emotions underneath. They're trying to hide everything underneath that fiery anger because that's more acceptable.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, I feel that if you repress a lot, you get to a point where you're numb and you can't cry
Mm-hmm.
and you can't
Mm-hmm.
express even anger, or you're not
Yeah.
allowed to.
Yeah.
And that
Totally.
that
That
gets
happens a lot.
that's even worse if you just are totally walking around not knowing what you're feeling, how you're feeling, what's going on, and oh my gosh, sacred rage. Talk a little bit about that because I haven't heard of anyone that I've known talk about working with women with about sacred rage. How do you uncover that, like what women have, and how do you work with that with women?
Yeah. So I love to let's look at like another symbol because it can teach us a lot about this, the ocean, right?
Mhm.
So the ocean, it can be very nourishing and deep. And like, who doesn't love a day at the beach and like being with the ocean? And she's got low tides and high tides. But the ocean can also rage, right? Like the ocean can create hurricanes and it can wash over cities and wash out surfers and divers and boats and drag boats to the bottom of the ocean, right? Like no one wants to mess with the ocean
Right.
because even though she is beautiful and nourishing, she's also the most powerful force on earth, right? Water is the most powerful. And sometimes, she doesn't always look that way because she looks soft and she looks sweet and we drink water. But then all of a sudden she's beating up against these cliffs, right? And she's the one who wears down these cliffs more and more and makes sand out of the rock and does all of those beautiful things. So, as women, this is like such a great view of the divine feminine within us, right? We are all like the ocean. We can have emotion, we can have flow, we can have intuition, but that rage portion, right? There's not a day probably that the ocean doesn't rage somewhere. There's always some storm. She's so big, there's always some storm on the ocean. And so it's really important for women to be able to tap into that rage. And not now, I want to talk about this distinction between sacred rage and what I would call something like indignance. Um, and there is like petty anger, right? This anger that we get for things like, we're mad about whatever, stubbing our toe or doing something wrong or whatever. And then there's sacred rage. And sacred rage is this rage of, something dear to you, has been taken away, or it's this feeling of enough is enough, right? I'm here to protect my own. I'm here to, make something right. You come to the end of your rope. And I'll give you an example of this. Like every woman has sacred rage, and that rage can build up over time because anger is this emotion, and especially sacred rage is really about this emotion of I deserve to exist. I deserve to have my needs met, right? I deserve to be here and I deserve to be listened to. That's what sacred rage is really, really deeply about. It can also be about, right, generational stuff that has come up over the generations and generations of women being suppressed or whatever it is in your line that is happening. But that sacred rage is really important for the taking charge of like, no, I deserve to exist. I deserve to be here and I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to have my emotions. And so when we talk about, sacred rage, we want to separate it from violence because the scary thing about rage, and part of the reason, over hundreds of years, women have been told you're not allowed to be angry, just be nice. Just be nice to everybody. Just be nice. Sit back, relax. Don't tell anyone they've done anything wrong, right? Like you're not allowed to be angry. Um, and it's important to break through that. And the reason that we've often been told, you can't be angry is because and the reason we're scared of anger is because of the violence aspect. Because we have all seen what violence can do to people and what anger can do to people. It can kill people, it can hurt people, maim people. But when we talk about sacred rage, we separate it from violence because sacred rage doesn't have to be violent against anyone else, right? Like we do not, to perform and help ourselves let go of this rage, we don't have to be violent. And some ways that we can do that and make it a safe space, and that's why it's sacred, right? It's sacred because you're setting up a container for yourself to have this happen. Just like a temple is sacred, like sacred things happen inside a temple, right? Sacred things happen in a special designated space. And that's the first step with sacred rage is we need a special designated space. That can be a car, like just in your car, can be a great place to just scream and scream and scream and yell, by yourself. That can be out in the middle of the woods, that where you can like you can throw rocks into a lake. That can be whatever space you want. It can be your backyard, it can be your garage, whatever you want it to be. And there are places that they have now, like rage rooms where you can smash stuff with a
Right.
baseball bat,
Right. You know what?
you know.
I use my shamanic drum.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
that's
I
perfect.
used it the other day just for a minute. It felt so good.
Yes, rhythm is so important to the feminine. Rhythm and drums, particularly, can be so healing. And so, what we want to do when we want to have sacred rage is we want to set apart a space for it, a locked door, wherever you want to be, and then we want to allow ourselves to let go in that space. So, a great thing that people do sometimes is take a stick and hit it against the ground or hit it against rocks or trees. Like I said, you can throw big stones into a lake or a river. You can, if you want to set up something in your garage where you can smash something with the tarp underneath it, whatever you want to do. If you want to pound on a drum, you can do that. But just setting apart your time to allow yourself to be angry. And sometimes we have to do this on the fly, right? Because that anger can just boil and boil up and suddenly fly out. And
Yes.
so maybe just like tucking yourself into a closet real quick or like screaming into a pillow, but allowing yourself to really not just be angry, because there's a difference, right? You can be angry and you can snap at your kids all day long, right? Like, or snap at your husband, yell at someone and be, say whatever you want to say. But actual rage involves a lot of that physicality, letting yourself get physical because we are very scared of being physical. And so one time, what I did, which was really helpful for people, which might be really out of people's comfort zone, but I recommend, highly recommend this practice is I locked my door, right? This was me all alone in my bedroom, door locked, window shut, and I let myself take on the persona of a dragon, which can be really
Love
helpful.
that.
Like taking on a persona, a jaguar, or some kind of animal can really help you if you're having a hard time letting out rage. And you imagine yourself as this dragon. And I did. And I allowed myself to like hit my pillows around and like tear things up with my teeth and, like let myself claw and scrape and scream, and that was so, at the end of that, it was so healing for me. I literally laid back on my bed and just laughed. I
Oh,
like
it's great.
laughed and laughed, for a full belly laugh, because that's what happens is once you have worked through the rage and let it out, then it alchemizes into something beautiful,
Yeah.
right? It alchemizes into laughter and joy. It alchemizes into letting go and peace. It alchemizes into tears, and letting yourself cry what's underneath that rage and letting it go. And so, I do recommend if you are having a hard time tapping in, think about some kind of archetype, persona, animal that's really easy to imagine getting angry and being that thing and letting yourself be that thing, because your own rage will come up as you do that. Like it just needs space to come up, but your own rage will come up and it can become this beautiful alchemized thing. We don't need to be afraid of it. We just need to alchemize it into something beautiful, which it is.
I love that. So I'm so glad you shared that. And I also am glad that you laughed because, a lot of people think, oh, we're going to cry afterwards, but laughter is an amazing emotion that just shows that you've just peeled off all those tough layers, right? And dragon is a great analogy because I know in Qigong, we have dragon movements that are big and expansive, and you're throwing
Mm.
and you're picking up and you're letting go. And it's like really shifting that energy inside and
Totally.
outside. So, oh, I love that. Amazing. It's great. Yes, and please be in a safe space. I mean, if anyone is going to be anywhere, just maybe even tell people that you're going into your safe dragon lair and you're going to let go of some stuff for a bit.
Yes, yes.
Love
Container
that.
is step number
Container
one.
is
It's
important.
very
Yeah,
important.
very
Yeah.
important. So you talk about the heroine's journey a lot. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that?
Oh, yes. I love the heroine's journey. So people have, we've been popularized by Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell popularized this idea of the hero's journey, which most people have probably heard of, which includes like having a mentor, leaving the real world, getting a mentor, doing all these tasks that you do, achievement, 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 and then ultimately, you get the girl. The heroine's journey or the hero's journey is very much just for a contrast. The hero's journey is really what we see in most, TV series. We see it in most movies, and also it's what we see in video games a lot. Is like, you defeat level after level after level, and then you beat the big boss at the end, and you win. And it's been popularized so much. But when Joseph Campbell popularized this, there was a group of women who asked him, "What about the heroine's journey?" And he said, "Oh, well, women, they don't need a journey. They don't need a heroine's journey because they're the place that everybody's trying to get to." And
Mm.
I always like to say, well, sorry, Joe, there may be some truth in this idea that, the divine feminine is what the masculine is trying to get to. That's true, right? The masculine wants to get to that feminine, but there is actually a journey for women, and it is just as archetypal as the journey for men, the hero's journey. And the way that Campbell did this was he took old myths, he took the structures of stories and studied them all out and saw, okay, this is the format that happens over and over again. Well, what we have done, and we're not the only people to have done this. Obviously, we're standing on the shoulders of giants as well, but we have looked through so many myths and gone back in the archetypes to find the heroine's journey. What is the archetypal heroine's journey, the journey for women? And it's very different, as you can imagine, for the than the hero's journey. So the heroine's journey has four parts to it. The first part is this awakening piece. Sometimes this is called an initiation. Oftentimes it's like this awakening. And I would love to take you through this, with some stories that we have heard. And I'll do one that is more familiar to people in our modern context. So let's think about Alice in Wonderland, okay, in the form of this heroine's journey. Alice's awakening or initiation is seeing the white rabbit. Right. So Alice sees this white rabbit and she starts following it. She knows she needs to follow the white rabbit. And in our initiation phase for women, oftentimes what happens in this awakening is the world is not what you think that it was. You wake up to this idea, okay, the world is not what I thought it was. What I believed, there's some piece that isn't true. Something's not working for me. And this can happen through an event. Sometimes lots of time for women, because we're so burned out, this often happens with a health event, right?
Right.
We're like, oh no, I'm hypothyroid now. What am I going to do? We have cancer, whatever it is. Oftentimes it's a physical event for women. Other times the awakening is, I've done everything in the hero's journey, right? Like I've done everything the masculine way and I still feel empty. Why am I empty? And where is this emptiness coming from? And so those are often the paths. Other ones are, like I said, like my awakening piece, right, was the world is not what I thought it was. Oh my gosh, we're running this fraudulent study. Holy cow, I've got to like go into the rabbit hole, right? Like I have to follow this down. Now, often in the initiation phase, there is this piece where you'll have guides or people tell you to don't go down that rabbit hole. Okay, like don't go down, don't do that, don't go astray, be careful, like be careful, don't go into this stuff, don't do this alternative, whatever. And you'll have warning people who will tell you that. But something in you just says, no, I need to go down this rabbit hole, right? Like I've got to go down. And in the heroine's journey, it's very much a descent to ascend. So you must descend to ascend. Just like Alice, she's a great example because she actually tumbles in through a hole. She goes down, right? And so that is the second step, is this descent phase. And in the descent phase, we meet our shadow pieces. And when I say shadow pieces, you've probably talked about this before. Everyone's talking about shadow work, but we meet the pieces of ourselves that we have isolated and that we've tried to get rid of and stuff in a corner, right? We meet these pieces of ourselves that we've hated. And we start to peel back the layers of ourselves that aren't true to us. The descent phase is very much this part of like, okay, is this true or is it not? Like, I don't think this is true. Let's peel it away. I don't think this is true. Let's peel it away. It's very much like finding more and more information about yourself. Okay, what is this shadow piece of me doing? What do I need? What's actually coming up? So that descent phase is really like, okay, we're peeling back all these layers. We're peeling. We're going down, 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 down. We're learning more, and then we hit the bottom, right? And this can be a really hard part for people because, as it's called a descent, like some people feel really depressed, right? At this phase, you can feel very sad during this phase, because the world is not what you thought. You're having to face demons. You're having to say, oh, some of the things I thought were true were not true. You have to come to grips with reality in a totally different way. And so some women, this is part of the reason we created the heroine's journey. And what I do is because some people will get stuck in this phase, right? Like they get stuck, they get really sad. And we don't want people to get stuck in this phase. And eventually it all comes through, right? Like I think eventually people get to the other side, but this phase can feel hard, like really hard and
Right.
difficult. And so we want to help people know there's more to the story, right? You don't end down at the bottom of the rabbit hole. You don't. What does Alice do next? She goes through the door into Wonderland. Right. And when you're in Wonderland, right, everything's kind of topsy-turvy and there's odd things. And she's on a search. She's trying to find the white rabbit. And she's got some guides. She's got the Cheshire cat. She's got the the Mad Hatter and all these people pushing and the caterpillar, whatever you find down there. And so this third part is called the search phase.
Mm.
So we're searching. And in ancient times, oftentimes this search phase was categorized or epitomized by a labyrinth that you go down into the cave and then you hit the labyrinth and you have to search in the labyrinth. Now, this part is very intuitive, right? Because it's in the dark. It's different. It's emotional. It's searching for yourself. And in this place, this is where you get to decide your fate. Like you could decide who you are. And so you decide which way you're going to go, right? You decide where am I going to turn left? Am I going to turn right? Okay, there's a stone wall here. I need to go the other way. And this is really the part where you're trying things on, right? I'm trying things on. I'm trying something new. I'm putting these on. I'm going to try this new diet or this new workout or whatever it is, right? And it's this search where you're looking for you now. You're trying to find your whole worthy authentic self because she's down here, right? Like the key to your wholeness is in this search place. You just got to find her. And like I said before, like with Alice in Wonderland, often this part has some guides to it. So you'll get mentors, you'll get people who come into your life who push you. And sometimes guides don't look the way we think, like with the Mad Hatter, right? Like who
Right.
would take advice from a Mad Hatter?
Right.
But like sometimes we get that person who doesn't, you wouldn't think would be a good guide, but they give you a good piece of information. And maybe they're not your true guide, but they help push you in the right direction, right? And so eventually, once you've done this search, what does Alice find? She finds the white rabbit finally. She goes to the castle, she's got the white rabbit and in her sights. And so in this search phase, you get the key to your wholeness, which leads you to the last phase, which is the ascent phase. You get to ascend back upward to the light of day. And so you've got the key to your wholeness. The ascent phase is all about integration. How do you integrate all of the pieces of you together? And the ascent phase often also has to do with becoming more of a teacher, helping other people. You become a mentor to other people. And every woman, like everyone going through this, that's why so many people, they go on their health journey and then they're like, I got to teach this, right? Like I got to help other people, right? That's always people's journey is like, oh, I went through all this stuff and like it worked so well for me. I found my wholeness and now I've got to teach you. And that is that ascent phase. Let's integrate it. Let's ascend. Let's integrate all of our pieces. Now, there's one more place to this because I could say, and then you live happily ever after. You ascended, right? Like you're ascended. But for the heroine's journey, that's not the way it works, right? The masculine journey is very linear. It's point A to point B. The heroine's journey is not like that. It's a spiral.
Spiral.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
always a spiral. So you got to go on the journey over and over and over again. We're always journeying, we're always spiraling, right? Descend to ascend. And if you've ever seen a spiral or like look at a top when it spins and spins, you can see how somehow it's constantly going inward and upward at the same time, right? It's constantly going inward and upward, inward and upward. And that is the heroine's journey, inward and upward in this perfect spiral, which eventually allows you to ascend all the way up.
I love this. Beautiful. Yes. And as you're talking, I thought about that you will go up and you'll come back, you go in and come out in that labyrinth. And it's beautiful. That's amazing. I love that. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we're very cyclical, right? We live in cycles because we're like the moon.
Yes, we
And so,
are.
of course, this journey is cyclical. It's cycles, and you get to decide each cycle,
Yeah.
right? What you're going to change and how you're going to ascend.
And I think some of the work you do to help women move through parts when they can be stuck, because we can get stuck and we can get stuck in that sadness, or we can get stuck in a loop, or we can
Hmm.
go down a road that maybe we don't need to go down, and
Hmm.
we need to just be guided. That's why there's so many women, like you said, we've gone through some of these parts of awakening
Hmm.
and now are coming through to help others. And I love that. I want to talk a little bit about sacred feminine symbols because I know you're very passionate about that. When we talked, you said you're in search for all these beautiful symbols and they really speak to you. So maybe besides we talked about the tree of life, are there other symbols and how they can women can use these symbols in maybe their daily life or when they're looking to find some of this ascension?
Yes, totally. Okay, so like I told you, I've been on this journey. I wanted to find as many feminine symbols as I could because I think as women we have this idea that there aren't really feminine symbols, right? Like we don't associate symbols with ourselves. But so far I've been, scouring different countries and different cultures, and I found more than 60 feminine symbols.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm up to 65 now. So they're out there. They're everywhere. Once you have the eyes to see them, they're everywhere.
What are
And
some of
so
your
I would give
favorite?
you, what's my favorite? I don't know if I have a favorite, but right now I feel very close to the jaguar actually as a feminine symbol. I've been really working with that energy a lot, but and I've been trying on. I felt like if I'm going to help women find these symbols, I've got to learn how to embody them. Like I need to have experiences with each of them. And that's what I've been trying to do is deeply have experiences with these symbols. So let me explain a few. I'll tell you some of them. We
Okay.
can go through a few quickly. And if you want to touch more in depth, because I love to do this to open people's minds so that they can see like, oh,
Yeah.
this is so much bigger than I thought that it could be, and then I would love to talk about like why are symbols important, right? How can you use them? Why do we use them? And so some symbols, you're going to be familiar with. So here are some people probably might be familiar with it, and they'd be like, oh, this makes sense for symbolizing women and the feminine, right? We've talked about the tree, the moon, water. Of course, those are very classic feminine symbols. There's also, I mentioned the honeybee earlier. That's a divine feminine symbol. It's also, I would say, a classic, a classic divine feminine symbol. But let's get into some that maybe are scarier for people and like might be surprising. So the serpent, which I think is like popular, right? If people are like, why am I seeing snakes everywhere? It's because it's a divine feminine symbol. And as we go through these, kind of like we talked in the beginning with the yin and the yang, because we have demonized the divine feminine, some of these symbols might make you uncomfortable when we talk about them. And they might be things like snakes are scary, right? Like, don't snakes represent, the devil? Actually, no, long before they represented the devil, they actually represented eternal life,
Mhm.
right? We always have the snake shedding its skin, always growing, always changing, right? It flows, the way that it moves flows just like water flows, right? So the snake has so many beautiful things, but now we've demonized it as evil, when it's really truly not. So there's the serpent, the spider is another one. And again, it's probably one that people are like, why are we talking about spiders? How could that be like, why are you, this is an awful bug, But the spider, right? She weaves her web.
Yeah.
She weaves her web. She lets things come to her. She's associated with mother spider in shamanic cultures, right? That she weaved the earth. The idea that the goddess weaved the earth and weaves time and space. And what do women do? We weave time and space, right? With our bodies. And so does a spider. She weaves, right? With her body. She takes things in. She makes this beautiful web that's so gorgeous. The patterns on it. So that's another one to think about. And while we're talking about weaving, obviously veils are going to be associated with the feminine, and you're going to have like looms and things like that will also be associated. Some other ones that are pretty typical is like the pomegranate. You want to think about
Oh,
Persephone. She eats a pomegranate, that red, the seeds, the fertility piece, right, is really tied to this. But let's talk about some that like maybe are more rare, like the jaguar that we talked about. I bet most people didn't know that the jaguar
did
was a
not
divine,
know.
yeah, symbol. The orca is another divine feminine symbol,
Okay.
and that one makes more sense to people, I think, sometimes because they're matriarchal society.
Mm.
Orcas are the grandmothers. They're one of only three species that has a grandmother, and it's orcas, elephants, and people. We're the only ones that have grandmothers, and elephants, coincidentally, are also a divine feminine
I could
symbol.
see that.
And yes, and elephants. I don't know if you knew this. Did you know that elephants worship the moon?
No, I did not.
Yes,
Oh, I
they
love
have
that.
every full moon, they have like these actual ceremonies that are documented. And they make like a special circle and they take branches and they wave it at the moon and they have like a whole ritual that they
Oh,
perform every month to the moon, which is really beautiful.
oh, I
Um,
love that. I have to look into that more.
yes, yes, orcas do the same thing. Orcas
Yeah.
dance for the moon. They have like a special full moon swim that they do. So that's something really cool to like look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if women are drawn to some symbol, whatever that is, I feel it's what they need, whether it's masculine or feminine. Right. So if you're
Totally.
drawn to something or if you see repeated, so I see a fox. So here's a symbol.
Mm-mm.
Lately in my backyard, like right near my window at the same time in the morning, walks by this fox. He comes, it's a she because she's looking for food, I think.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I looked it up. Is a fox related to divine feminine energy? And it absolutely is. And I
Mhm.
needed to hear that or see that symbol for something I'm going through. I'm like, that is a beautiful symbol for me. So I've been seeing the fox a lot lately. So if you see
Yeah.
something that is coming up for you, look it up and see what it
Yeah.
means. For
Yeah.
that's
Foxes are magical. Like, I love that you're saying the fox.
I
I
do
love the
too.
fox
Yeah, me
as a
too.
symbol.
I
They're
love it.
so
They're
beautiful.
so beautiful. I just wish it would pause for a moment so I could just have this nonverbal communication with it or something. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. I really love this. I want to wrap up a little bit. So if you want to talk about what your offerings are, how you help women, what you have, and the floor is yours. So tell everyone out there what you have to offer.
Yeah. Can I tell people why symbols are important
Oh
real
yes,
quick?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the reason that we use symbols, and there are tons more, these are just like a sampling, but the reason that we use symbols is because symbols are very tangible. We can relate to them, right? When I say the word pomegranate or spider, like you know what that is, and you can see it and experience it and understand, right, its qualities. And that's part of the reason. And so when I talk about embodying symbols, we use the nature of that symbol to help us in our own physical path, our bodies, and the meaning. And of course, symbols have layers and layers and layers of meaning. And that's why they're such a good tool to work with because you can dig into them more and more, and they always have more to teach you. So that's part of the reason these divine feminine symbols are so important because they help teach us what the divine feminine is and how to embody it in our own bodies, right? In our own lives. But as far as the work that I do, I have a school called Feminine Alchemist. And you can go to femininealchemist.com. That mist part, alchemist is spelled MYST, like mystical. And we have a school for women who want to learn, right, all about the divine feminine, embody it. We teach sacred embodiment, which is like what we talked about, that sacred rage portion. We actually have created the heroine's journey. And so we take women step by step on the heroine's journey, help them through that. We do, guided meditations, tasks, rituals. We take women through and teach them about the symbols. We teach women about astrology. We teach them about human design, and energetics. And so those are like the three big pillars that we teach is sacred embodiment, astrology, and energetics. And we really help women get to know who they are and awaken the divine feminine within themselves. So that's what we do. We do retreats. We take women on the heroine's journey, and I personally do astrology and human design readings, which you can find me at Astrological Attorney on Instagram, Astrological Attorney, and astrologicalattorney.com is how you can get in touch with me personally.
Yes, I'll put all the links in the show notes. I really want to have you back at some point to talk more about astrology and human design because we didn't have a chance to do that. Um, there's so much here that you spoke about that resonates with me, and I'm sure will resonate with so many people. It's just really a gift that you have, and that you're sharing with everyone. And I'm so glad that your path led you to here because you're just magical, and I really mean that. So thank you, thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
time and your space here. So many times when you were talking, I just felt like my whole body, like I could really sense what you were saying in my own body, and it just was really enlightening for me. So I wanted to share that with you. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much. I love to do it. And thank you for having this beautiful platform and for all that you do. I just feel so grateful to be connected to you.
Thank you, Julie. And I do want to have you back one day. And thank you, and everyone out there, please check Julie out. She's amazing, and I know you know that from everything that she talked about today. So thank you.